Top of the morning to you. Welcome in. It is great to see everybody. A little crisp, but it's nice in here, and toasty for our visits for sure. All right, we're in Daniel 3 if you want to make your way. Good to have you fellas in here with us. Daniel chapter 3, and I will tell you that I hope, as cool as it is outside, that you brought your personal fan for inside, so we're about to get toasty. We're dealing with the fiery furnace this morning of our King in Daniel chapter 3. What are we going to do when he threatens us with this? Well, of course, we're going to be starting in verse number 1, so let's just go right ahead and get to it. We have much we need to cover, very interesting stuff also, I'll add. Verse 1 of Daniel 3, Nebuchadnezzar, the king, made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits and its width 6 cubits. He set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Question to you, why is this guy building an image of gold? Any guesses? And just in full disclosure, in fairness, I mean, we're not directly told, okay? We're just kind of using our brain and trying to connect some dots here. Go ahead. Ah, he is the head of gold, he says. Uh-huh, nice. In Isaiah 14, verse 4, it's termed the Golden City. Remember reading that? Okay, that's what you had in mind. Yeah, really quickly, just as we get started, let's go back and remind ourselves from chapter 2 what we covered last week. So chapter 2, starting in verse 31, this is Daniel, for those coming in, Daniel 2, verse 31. You, O king, were watching. This is from his dream, Daniel interpreting. And behold, a great image. All right, let's pause right here for a moment. Does anybody recall the measurements that we just read in chapter 3, verse 1 of this image? No, that's fine. Go ahead. Excellent. You're the only one who raised your hand, so go ahead. Okay, so 60 cubits. I doubt this representation and this animation is to scale, but it gives an idea. I do think there's a chance that height-wise it could be just about right. I think it might be a little bit wide in the image, perhaps. So 60 cubits. Did you say how many feet? I thought you might have said, yeah. Okay, wide, we have 9 feet, and with the 60 cubits, we're going to have 90 feet tall. This image isn't any joke. It's a good size. Now, I find that interesting because you go back to where we're reading in Daniel 2, verse 31. You, O king, from his dream were watching, and behold, a great image. Another word for that would be a huge image. It's almost like he's putting into reality what he's had in his head in the dream world. This great image, whose splendor was excellent, stood before you. Its form was awesome. This image's head was of fine gold, has the chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of bronze, legs of iron, feet partly of iron, partly of clay. And then we'll skip on down just a little bit. Verse 36, this is the dream. Now we will tell you the interpretation of it before the king. You, O king, are a king of kings, for the God of heaven has given you a kingdom, power, strength, and glory. And wherever the children of men dwell, or the beasts of the field and the birds of the heaven, he has given them into your hand and has made you ruler over them all. You are this head of gold. Well, we already know something about the persona of Nebuchadnezzar. What would you say concerning this man heading into chapter 3? A maniac? Okay, what else? I wouldn't disagree. Megalomaniac. That's so big I've never heard of that one. So I'm guessing that's a times 100 maniac. Okay. Which is very common among pagan rulers, especially emperors over kingdoms. And he might not be called this necessarily. But yeah, they think that they're God on earth. Okay? They think a lot of themselves. Roy? It does seem, and I think he's torn a little bit. And maybe he's easily swayed also. So it could be in the moment he gets really excited and he'll say what's on his heart, but then the next moment he has something else on his heart from excitement. Could very well be the case, which is pretty common among people too. I think you're right, yeah. And remember, this is early in King Nebuchadnezzar's spiritual journey, okay? And in fairness to the guy, he doesn't have the background of the Hebrews. So let's try in our heart of hearts to cut him a little slack, to be patient with the guy, because I'm telling you, if we will, we're going to see some marked improvement with him along the way. All right, so right now, though, he's heard there's this great image. You've seen it in your dream. You already know about it. The top of it's overlaid with gold. You are the head of gold, but there are other metals that are involved because there are other kings and kingdoms that are involved. But you go back to our text, for those coming in, good morning, good to see you. Daniel chapter 3, verse 1, Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold, and it sounds like the whole thing's gold. Why do you think he would make the whole thing gold and not just part of it like he's seen in his dream? Too expensive? He can? What else, Gene? Okay, there you go. Who does the gold, and what does the gold represent? Babylon and his ruler, he's been told, a king of kings, Nebuchadnezzar. So instead of making just the head of this image gold, he makes the entire thing that way. And it could very well be that this is a wee bit of a rebellion against God, who has revealed to him, hey, you're a great king, you're going to do a lot of things, but, and then other people are going to come in other kingdoms. Maybe he's saying, no, it's just me, and it's just my kingdom. I do want to repeat, I'm not saying that we're told this very thing in Scripture, but I find it fascinating. Right after his dream of this great or big image, the next thing you know, he's making a big image that's similar to, but probably as he sees it, is even improved from the image that he saw in his dream. Because instead of his just being over a part of world history, he's going to be over all now of world history. Marcy? Oh, good question. It's probably being used somewhere. So for those who didn't hear, Marcy asked, where did all this gold? That takes a lot of gold. Also, there are many who believe, Bible students, that not the entire image was like 100% to the core gold, but is often the case with religious items that they'll be, like with the tabernacle and the temple, overlaid with gold. And that could be the case here. Even at that, an image 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide, all overlaid with gold, there's no telling what that would be worth. So what happened to it? Good question. We're not told. However, typically when one kingdom or one nation will absorb another, it gets melted down and reformed into something else. So it wouldn't surprise me if it's still circulating around the earth somewhere. It would add up. Good question. All right, so back in our chapter 3, verse 1, Nebuchadnezzar the king makes this whole image of gold instead of just the head, which he had seen. The height's 90 feet tall, 9 feet wide. He sets it up in the plain of Dura in the province, the kingdom of Babylon. I do want to mention about this, which might kind of correlate just a little bit with what you're asking, Marcy. Dura, one of the definitions given to it is a walled place. A walled place. And about 6 miles south of Babylon, there's a place by this name, still today, where archaeologists have found a large brick construction, 45 feet square and 20 feet high. It's like it was a huge platform. The suggestion has been made that this structure may be the ruins of the pedestal upon which the statue of Daniel 3 was erected. There are also a number of Bible scholars who think that the 90 feet might not be the entirety just of the statue, but the whole contraption, the whole image, which probably did include a platform underneath it. So it might be what survives today from the ancient world is still the base ruins of this very image that was constructed some 2,600 years ago. Pretty interesting stuff. All right, moving on to verse 2. And King Nebuchadnezzar sent word to gather together the satraps, the administrators, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates. I think this might be an important event here. And all the officials of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image which King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. We're never told of what this is an image. I'd like to know. You have any guesses? What might this image reflect? I I have a wild guess. Do you have any? I think there's a pretty good chance after his dream and his being told, you, O king, are the gold. You are the golden head. Hey, I got a great idea. I'm going to make a whole image of gold. And apparently it's in human form, it would seem. I'm like you, Joe. I have a suspicion that the image is probably of King Nebuchadnezzar, who's going to be worshipped as the God of heaven has revealed to him, the King of Kings on earth right now. Joe? That could be a strong hint, Mr. Clark, that he's so upset about something that happens involving this image. It's almost like a personal slight, isn't it? Okay, so verse 3, so the satraps, the administrators, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces gathered together for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up, and they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then a herald cried aloud, to you it is commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that at the time you hear the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, and psaltery, and symphony with all kinds of music, you shall fall down and worship the gold image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Seems to be a lot of pomp and circumstance surrounding this. Really impresses people, doesn't it? And so the king wants there to be a big show whenever his worship goes on. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast immediately into the midst of a burning, fiery furnace. Why is there a burning, fiery furnace, and perceivably many of them around Babylon? Okay. Could be that he just constructed these just to burn people that he doesn't like, all right? That's pretty intimidating, isn't it? Babylon, though, we know is a place that is very well built. It's beautiful. Elaborate, Joe? All right, you got to have some heat to bake it, don't you? To bake the brick. Yeah, and it's widely thought that this and probably other of the furnaces throughout Babylon are used to bake the many bricks that are needed to build this elaborate city that then all over the city is overlaid with gold. The golden city, the Bible calls it. Verse 7, so at the time when all the people heard the sound of the horn, flute, harp, and lyre, and symphony with all kinds of music, all the people, nations, and languages fell down and worshiped the gold image which King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Why are there so many peoples and languages in this nation? Okay. Yeah, you go back, and I don't have a map today to show it to you, but Babylon is found in what place of the world? You know, obviously the Middle East, but in Mesopotamia and in the Fertile Crescent, right? Right. Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers, and it seems that that people's most ancient ancestry from all walks and historians understand come from that general location. That's one thing, but the other thing is this is a world empire, meaning they're absorbing whenever they take over, and they're conquering all these nations and peoples all around. And so they're growing the kingdom through all these different ethnicities and races, and of course they have their own religions and languages, and so this is a big melting pot, this place. But all people, all nations and languages under this rule fall down. They worship the gold image which King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And do you blame them in that? I mean, you get burned alive if you don't do it. So it's kind of a scary prospect. Well, we move on in verse 8. Therefore, at that time, certain Chaldeans, another word for Babylonians, came forward and accused the Jews. You have a couple of ethnicities facing off against each other right here. They spoke and said to King Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. You know, when you get a good tyrant in place who forces his ways and religion and education, a.k.a. indoctrination upon you, and threatens you and your family, I mean, you don't want a guy like that ever to go out of power, do you? That makes sense. Verse 10, you, O king, they say, have made a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, and psaltery, and symphony with all kinds of music shall fall down and worship the gold image. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. First of all, O king, we love you, you're fantastic. Number two, remember that command that you gave with the punishment that you threatened? Your word does mean something, right? They're buttering him up. They want to get their way here. Verse 12, there are certain Jews. You see what's going on here? It's not like people talking about other people. It's getting a little, I don't know if I'd say racially as much as ethnically charged here. And so you have these two nationalities who probably don't like each other anyway. And these Babylonians are accusing Jews. The problem is the slaves, O king, that you brought in, whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon. Joe, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego by name. These men, O king, have not paid due regard to you. That could be a hint. And it might just be talking about the decree itself. But it might be if he's the image, king, they are disrespecting and not worshiping you, the King of Kings. They do not serve your gods or worship the gold image which you have set up. All right, so let's get a little reminder here. Why has King Nebuchadnezzar set these men over the province of the territory? Why didn't he choose any others? Back at the end of chapter 2, be refreshed in verses 48 and 49. Then the king promoted Daniel from the interpretation of his dream and gave him many great gifts, and he made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, second-hand man, much like Joseph in Egypt, and chief administrator over all the wise men of Babylon. Also Daniel petitioned the king, and he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon, but Daniel sat in the gate of the king. I know we regularly point out the danger here involved with Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, but seldom do we connect. Who else might be in danger here? If you got three men who are really causing problems, not in the king's kingdom, but in the king's administration, and Daniel is the one responsible for getting them into those positions of power, I think the prophet himself is at risk with his own life. So it's important on a couple of different fronts here. Verse 13 could very well be. Excellent point. And we know that the Chaldeans, they're mentioned with the wise men and the astrologers, right? And all of these. And remember, they're all kind of competing for the same positions. Daniel really isn't even trying. That's not his intention behind it. Yet he, and then consequently his friends, by his request, win these high positions of authority over a lot of these guys. I think you're right, Roy. It could be some animosity that continues because of that, and they want to get even with them, and it might be that they concoct this whole plan knowing how strongly these men in the administration trust in their God, and like someone else about whom we'll read later in a different empire that's subsequent would trust in his God, and we know there's a plan concocted from that. So excellent. You may be exactly right. Verse 13, then Nebuchadnezzar in rage and fury, this guy is beyond angry, he gives the command to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, so they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar spoke, saying to them, is it true? I mean, you can just hear the tone of his voice, I feel like, here. You really think you should try me this way? Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the gold image which I have set up? I believe he thinks pretty highly of himself. Now, if you are ready at the time you hear the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, and psaltery, and symphony with all kinds of music, pomp and circumstance for humanity, that's what gets us all excited, right? And you fall down and worship the image which I have made, good! But if you do not worship, you shall be cast immediately into the midst of a burning, fiery furnace. Haven't they already heard this before? Why do you think he's telling them this? Okay? He's giving them another chance, Robbie. You know, I also wonder, too, that if he's just not so hurt, this would be a chance to even bolster his pride a little bit more, and then to show everybody, yeah. But, you know, might it be also, based on what has already been revealed to him and in the dream about the God of heaven, could he have maybe deep down, the guy with no fears, could he maybe have a little bit of fear of the God of these guys? I don't know. Just something to consider. Regardless, he repeats this threat. They've already heard this. And then he adds this question at the end. And who is the God who will deliver you from my hands? Justin, how does this guy view himself? Obviously, he's a God. And already he's had a foreign God to tell him, oh, you are a king of kings, and you've been given all of these things. And I think maybe he takes that message the wrong way. God's intending to help him out a little bit here with understanding, and instead he allows it just to inflate his ego even more. Perhaps to the point where he thinks he is a God over all gods, including the God of the Hebrews. He's about to find out about the God who can deliver from the hands of human kings. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. I think another way of stating that is, we're not going to apologize for our actions. That's a pretty stout response, wouldn't you say, to a guy who's just threatened your life with the most powerful man in the world. All right, who would like to say verse 17? We'll discuss the contents of that. That's our memory verse for those coming in. Thank you, by the way. Daniel 3:17. Roy, please. Yeah, that is. That's a good one. We'll see if we can. I like that. Let's use that as a foundation. See if we can build on that. Very good. Nice. Yes, please, John. Yeah, as far as all the other people, or these three? All the people? Yeah. Right. Yeah. And it could be, going back to verse 3, so the satraps, administrators, governors, counselors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, all the officials of the province gathered together. Okay, so it could be, too, that it's kind of implied by that they were ordered to. And, like a good teacher, roll being taken, of the pupils. But it might be that people are just so excited about it. I'm going to guess this, though, that with their position in government, for sure, it's going to be recognized if they're not with the others. I would think so. But that is a good observation. Yeah, very fair, no doubt about it. Yes, I'm sorry, Joe. Oh, okay. Okay, so back in verse 2, good point, yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. So one verse back, there is, an actual command that's given. Good, Joe. Thank you. All right, so first of all, we have at the end of verse 16, we're not going to apologize for our actions. Then from our memory verse, number 2, you ask a question, who is the God able to deliver you from my hands? Well, we serve a God who has no problem to do that if he wants. He's able to. And number 3, this is a guarantee. He will deliver us from your hand, O king. That's boldness in the face of adversity. Is it right for them to be so bold here? Because do they really know that he's going to deliver them from the wrath of the king? Okay. It could be they just have so much faith that they're going to be preserved alive in this furnace. 1. 2, what else? Very good. That may be also that God has let this known to them, maybe through an angel or something. It's certainly possible. I would suggest this is an alternative too. They might have in mind, ultimately, and when it's all said and done, even if we die here, we still win over you. Maybe like as martyrs, what they have in mind is as well. A, he's able to save us right here and now. B, whether it's that or in the next life, we win anyway. And that could be what they're thinking, and that would certainly be a guarantee. and it's a great lesson for us too, that it's important that we thought things through before we're in the heat of the moment, so we know what we're going to do if and when that situation comes. They've thought through. By this point, it's muscle memory. They know exactly what they're going to do, and that helps with those important decisions of life. Yeah, thanks for bringing that in too, Joe. Verse 18, but if not. So this would lead a little more credence to the idea that they have a persuasion they're going to be saved in it. It would also seem to be a suggestion that they haven't received information prior, that they're going to be saved. Nevertheless, they have so much confidence in their God. They know that He's able, and it wouldn't surprise them if He enacts His power to save them and to make this great showing over a guy trying to exalt himself into the place of God. But if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the gold image which you have set up. So you speak these kinds of words to an egomaniac. What was your word again? Because I want to say megamaniac, but I know it's not big enough. A megalomaniac, okay? You speak it to a guy like that, what's the reaction that you think you're going to get? Verse 19, then Nebuchadnezzar was full of fury, and the expression on his face changed toward Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You ever seen somebody get so mad, they start fidgeting with their lips, maybe even biting at them? That's when you know something's going on here. You see the expression on his face. He spoke and commanded that they heat the furnace 7 times more than it was usually heated. Some believe this is an expression like to the nth degree, or of course to the Hebrews we know perfection, to the perfection of hotness, the hottest of hotness that is even possible. Why is the king, do you think, so upset about this? I mean, obviously, we have the fact that, he thinks he's God. He thinks he can tell anybody to do whatever he wants. He's so powerful, he can force them to do whatever he wants out of fear. And then perhaps as well, he might be the very image that's constructed in this idol, and people aren't falling down to worship him, the King of Kings. But let's not forget, I think there's even more to it from the background. Consider, what has he done for Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah? These are guys that are being conquered in a foreign kingdom. He brings them in, and what does he do for them? Puts them in positions of power in his kingdom. All right. What else does he do prior to that? He trains them. He sends them to a Babylonian college, and it appears pays for it, right? He pays for their education. Like a good father, he names them. You recall their names? Hananiah to Shadrach, Mishael to Meshach, Azariah to Abednego, Daniel to Belteshazzar. He's so kind to change their names from what gives glory to God or Yahweh, the Lord, to his gods, Aku, Nebo, and Balak may or may not be regarded as a god, but we know some background of there as the king that he was in the eastern portion of the world way back when. But he's changed their names. He's given it, well, I don't know that he's been so kind to them as that he's invested so much time, energy, and money into these guys, not to educate them, but to indoctrinate them and to try to assimilate them into Babylonian culture. And here they are, after all of this, saying, all your efforts, all your money, O king, have done nothing. We're still as we were when we came in. We don't believe the way you believe, and we will not live the way you live. What an extra slap in the face to the ruler. Verse 20, and he commanded certain men of valor who were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, tie them up, and cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their coats, their trousers, their turbans, and other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. You see any significance in being thrown in with their coats, trousers, turbans, and other pieces of clothing? What do you see there? right? Tied up? Good. Okay. Yeah, clothes, especially certain types, are pretty flammable, right? So this could help serve as kindling, right, for these men is one. The second could just be the hurried nature of getting them in there, okay? But I think that's a big one right there. It's going to help them to burn is what it is, probably. But actually, God's just going to turn that into a further testimony to his power. Kind of. Well, all right, that's fair also. Yeah, maybe a little bit of protection for a tenth of a second more, just a slight added pain to them. All right, fair enough. Verse 22, therefore, because the king's command was urgent and the furnace exceedingly hot, the flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And there are certain kind of men. What type of men are these? Mighty men of power. The strongest they can endure, probably, you would like to think. Ladies might disagree with this. This is about the men. But the most amount of pain, they're like, oh, come on, give me a break. that might be fair. But these are big, strong guys. And the fire is so hot that as they throw the guys in, the flames lash out in the heat and kill these guys. Verse 23, and these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down from having been tossed, bound, tied up, Justin, into the midst, the middle. It's not like they were on the edge of it, the middle of the burning fiery furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished, and he jumped up in haste and spoke, saying to his counselors, whoa, did we not cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? Apparently there's some kind of a viewing window on this furnace, some way that you can look in and perceive what's on the inside. And he says, I see in the midst of the flame, we threw in 3 guys. They answered and said to the king, yes, you're right, O king, true. 3 men in. He says, look, I see 4. What happens when you put something into fire? You put much into fire, you end up with what? Less. The way fire works. It's destructive 100% of the time. So how is it possible that you could put in much and end up with more in the hottest of fires? Robbie? Yeah, no, agreed. So tying that in, verse 25, look, he answered, I see 4 men loose walking in the midst of the fire, and they're not hurt. Fire's not harming them in any way. And the form of the 4th is like the Son of God. Okay, so you might have in your translation, and can be rendered, like a son of the gods, which may be more in line with what he's saying here. But he's like, it's like deity is manifested right here with them, protecting them. What a fascinating concept. I just want to mention in brevity, because we don't have a lot of time to do it, the connection that can be made for us, Roy, and also Robbie. Verse 26, then Nebuchadnezzar went near the mouth of the burning fiery furnace and spoke, saying, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, listen to how his tune has changed, servants of the Most High God. It's like he's really moved by the moment, Roy. And God of heaven is highest again. Come out and come here. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came from the midst of the fire. Can you imagine the scene of these guys just walking out of this fire right back into their midst? And the satraps, administrators, governors, and the king's counselors gathered together, and they saw these men on whose bodies the fire had no power. The hair of their head was not singed, nor were their garments affected. And the smell of fire, Marty, testimony, clothes, was not found on them. Very quickly, lesson for us. Revelation 21, verse 8. But the cowardly, unbelieving, abominable, murderers, fornicators, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars shall have their part in the lake of what substance? Fire, which burns with fire and brimstone. You disobey the edicts of the king, and you're going to be subjected to intense fire, 7 times hotter than anything you could imagine. That's scary, isn't it? You look back in chapter 20 of Revelation in verse 6. Blessed and holy is he who has part in the first resurrection, conversion to Christ, the Son of God, not a son of the gods, but the Son of God. He says, blessed and holy is he who has part in the first resurrection. Over such the second death, which is the lake of what? Fire, has no power. But they shall live and reign with Christ for 1,000 years, or with deity for a complete period of time. You see the connection that's made between the two. I know we're running out of time. I have to read this one, though. Turn to Revelation 7. You're going to like this. Revelation chapter 7, because I'm like you, Robbie. I mean, it's neat history and cool biblical story, but if we don't get the significance for today, we miss out on what the whole teaching really is for us. Revelation 7, starting in verse 14, he says, these are the ones coming out of the great tribulation or trial. They have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb, conversion. Therefore they are before the throne of God and serve him day and night in his temple. He who sits on the throne will shelter or protect them by his very presence. They shall not hunger anymore, thirst anymore. The sun shall not strike them, listen, nor any scorching heat. No heat's going to harm them because he protects them with his presence. Who? For the Lamb, the Son of God, is in the midst of the throne. He will be their shepherd. He will guide them to springs of living water, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Elsewhere in Revelation chapter 21, we're told there's no death. There's no way they can be killed. Does this sound familiar when we're going back to Daniel, the 3rd chapter? Fire has no power over them because of the very presence of the one who a pagan man describes as, looks like the Son of God. Verse 28, Nebuchadnezzar, of Daniel 3, that is. Daniel 3:28 as we close. Nebuchadnezzar spoke, saying, blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel, his messenger, and delivered his servants who trusted in him, and they have frustrated the king's word, and yielded their bodies that they should not serve or worship any god except their own God. Therefore I make a decree that any people, nation, or language which speaks anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made an ash heap. We've seen that threat, which we know now is a promise of the king, because there is no other God who can deliver like this. You see the progress that's being made with Nebuchadnezzar? I know he's still pretty rough around the edges, but it seems like each year that goes by in the empire, he learns something about the true God, and he draws just a little bit closer to him. Verse 30, then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. You would think these guys aren't going to survive this experience. However, they survive, and they come out even more ahead than what they were before. There is no earthly explanation for that, but there is a heavenly explanation. If God is for us, who can be against us? Is anybody feeling sleepy this morning? We shouldn't be. We got an extra hour of rest. But if you are tired a lot in Bible class, I know how that is. I'm kind of that way. I'm not a morning person. You need to be here next week because we get to sleep in Bible class. That's not too bad, right? That's my offer to you. We're going to go back to bed, and we're going to experience Nebuchadnezzar's second dream together. I think you will enjoy it. That's found in chapter 4, Daniel 4, and we're going to memorize verse 37, the last one of that chapter. You want to see some more transformation in the king's life? You're about to see it next week. All right, thank you for the comments that were brought in. Any other remarks before we dismiss for a few? Okay, I look forward to next week.